Hey everyone, Pastor Wes here with you on Wednesday night. Hope you're doing well. We're picking back up in verse 8 of chapter 3, where Paul said, "Unto me, who am less than the least of all saints, is this grace given that I should preach among the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ." Paul was given, here he says, the grace by God to be able to proclaim to the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ. And I love that phrase, the unsearchable riches of Christ. The Greek word for unsearchable here literally means that these riches cannot be searched. They cannot be tracked. We would probably say today that it can't be explored. It's not something that can be examined. However, here Paul, he invites us to do the exploring of Christ's riches all that we can. And then he says, when you're finally exhausted from your search, you're going to discover that you've only begun to enjoy all that God has for us. You see, no matter how much we search, no matter how much we find in Him, we will never come to the end of all of His riches. And, you question, how big is the God that you worship? Well, the typical answer is going to be that He's absolutely infinite, that He's omnipotent, that He is just utterly awesome. But the question is, how big is God to you personally? Is He big enough to meet all of your needs? Is He big enough to handle all of your problems? Is He big enough to handle all of the desires that you have? Is He so big that you can't even begin to comprehend really how big He is? One of the words that is used as a synonym for unsearchable is the word unfathomable, which alludes to a search mission in the open sea. When seafarers want to determine how deep the water is, they emit sounds into the water and they measure the time it takes from the time that the sound leaves till it reflects off the bottom and comes back. The nautical unit of measure for that sounding is called a fathom, and it is about 6 feet in length. So when something is considered unfathomable, it means that the ocean depth is so great that the sound, when it goes down, it doesn't return. And what a powerful word picture that we get from that. In speaking of the full measure of Christ's riches in our lives, that there's literally no tracking to the end of them, that you can spend all of His riches and still not put a dent in His supply whatsoever. And so understanding that Christ's riches are unfathomable is something that frees us from the hazards of riches in the natural realm. So many times people have access to riches and they become secretive. They try to protect what they found. They even become selfish with it at times. They'll hire elaborate security staffs. They'll change their daily habits just in an effort to protect and hoard the wealth. Well, we often see excessive wealth destroying relationships, causing extensive personal problems. But the good news is that the riches of Christ are so inexhaustible that you're free to share them and spend them without worry, without poverty of tomorrow in any way. And these riches mean that we're freed from jealousy, we're freed from envy, we're freed from strife, we're free to love, we're free to rejoice in our salvation and to be able to impart this good news and grace to others. Unsearchable riches means that a person can know Christ their entire lifetime and yet still never discover all of His wealth, never discover all of the glory that He has for us. The riches of Jesus Christ are beyond exploration, beyond full discovery, beyond full experience, beyond full knowing. And Paul, highly educated, a man that spoke several languages, multicultural in thought, an excellent communicator, will be the first to admit, he says, I can't even articulate how much that I've discovered in Christ. And so as worshipers of God, this is great news to us because there's no place to go but higher and deeper in spirit and in truth. And Paul goes on to say in verse 9, he said, to make all men see what is the fellowship of the mystery, which is from the beginning of the world have been hid in God, who created all things by Jesus Christ. We'll pick back up here next week. Till then, hope you have a great weekend, great rest of this week. We'll see you next time. I love you. God bless you.